Hello brothers of internets, and welcome to this video where today we will be driving some muscle cars for week 8 of Stairway Mountain Hill Climb. Now, right now you're probably feeling all a bit confused because this is an ETK 800 series, the normal heart actually, a custom variant I've built because I wanted to turn it into what felt a bit more like a modern muscle car. It has got a V8 engine from Gavwell actually. It's the 5.5 litre engine that's used in, of all things, an ambulance among other vehicles, and that gives it a lot of power and torque, especially with the tuning I've got on it. It's 524 horsepower without any kind of supercharging, so you know, it's hard to say that's a bad thing, and it has rear-wheel drive. However, the throttle control from this vehicle is everything, as it has 355 tyres on the rear and on the front. So the front has a lot of grip, and if you just spin the rear tyres up for no reason, it's easy to get the rear out. I guess like a true muscle car where you wouldn't have that much grip available. It is on race tyres at the moment, although I'm sure I configured it with sport tyres. I don't know why it eventually went on race tyres and settled there. It just did. A lot of the other parts come from the TT Sport variant of the car, and there is the mudguards from an off-road ETK 800 series, as well as the body style which you saw earlier was the sedan, as it's the only way I could get it to work with the fender flares without using the estate, so was probably the best compromise to get a muscle car out of it. ESC and traction control have been turned off as per the rules of the series, but ABS is allowed, so you get that. All the assists would be on a modern muscle car, and I haven't removed the ESC and traction control because I didn't want it to take the weight off, since, well, the weight would be there in any kind of car. As I was saying, throttle control is everything with this vehicle. You have to be careful of what you do because it's so easy to spin it. I mean, it's not the hardest car to drive, don't get me wrong. It's no Bolide Corsair Competizione. The engine is smooth and you can use that engine to pilot the vehicle to a very large extent. Plus the power isn't just stupidly excessive, so that always helps matters. It is just a very, very fast car as well. Once you finally get it onto the straights, it is nigh on impossible to stop it. Impossible, we could say. And it just keeps on going. I guess like a train, you could say. Only a train that somewhat gets around corners. I must emphasise, it's not terrible around corners. It just will slide if you're not careful. It does keep you on edge. It's not the kind of car that's going to drive itself. Although, having said that, it is very, very fast. It sets a time that puts it in 9th currently on our leaderboard. And despite the rear-wheel drive, it's only a few seconds down on the I-Series Normal Heart, which is the closest car above it on the leaderboard. It's 7-ish seconds between the two cars. And the O'Creedy S88 Demon, again 9 seconds between them. Quite close in this kind of post 7 seconds but pre 7:30 group of cars. Below it is the D-Series D15 V10 supercharged all-wheel drive. A lot of words to say there. And that's set at 731.696. So cars below it are kind of good stock all-wheel drives. This is a car that I would say surprised me slightly. I was expecting a 730 from it, but I was able to push and push until I got a slightly better time than that. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it let me down. I would say it's done a pretty good job of simulating what a modern muscle car should do on the hill climb. Next up, we have the Oldsmobile Custom Cruiser Resto mod. This is, well, an estate with over 500 horsepower from a naturally aspirated V8. And as you'll see, it does get going and it grips reasonably well actually, which isn't bad considering the rear tyres are a 100 section narrower compound than on the TK. The problem with this car, though, is it's around about 250 kilos heavier than the ETK, which is a lot of weight to pull around. It's also got a ABS system and a ESC system, which I find odd, but you know, it must have been added in the restoration process. I guess it's possible. I mean, what do I know? I've never restored a car, so that's something to bear in mind. It has got ABS, but ESC has had to be turned off. The engine power isn't significantly more than the ETK, we have to bear that in mind, but it is more stable, and the brakes are just brilliant at slowing it down. Yeah, I mean, you press the brake pedal, this thing is going to slow. No doubt about it. The Norlhart wasn't bad, but I don't think it was on the same level as this. And this is all doing it with narrower tyres. It must just be an incredibly stable vehicle naturally. Now, that's part of the reason I used the estate as well, because I figured having the extra rear weight should help this vehicle. Also, it seemed like something a little different. I don't believe we've had an estate of this platform yet, but we have had the saloons, or sedans as you might call them, so always something a bit different there. It's still on very soft suspension, but that's no particular complaint, as well as the transmission. They just don't get in the way, they just do their job. So I have no complaints there, and a soft suspension system, particularly on a hill climb course like this, where there are a few bumps that'll throw you off. It's better than having an ultra stiff Formula 1 kind of suspension setup. This is a quick car, no doubt, remember, but it does have limits, and if you push it past those limits, it will oversteer, it will get difficult, basically. So you have to exercise some throttle control, but nowhere near as much as with the ETK. It just doesn't feel as touchy as that car. It's a lot easier to drive, so no particular problems there. I saw quite a high top speed from this. I saw about 108, although it could probably do quicker, and I have no doubt it can do faster on a straightaway without the corners and everything, but while having to deal with all this and the weight, it's not going to help. As I was saying, the transmission, it was just never in the way. I normally wouldn't like an automatic over a manual, but this one, in this particular case, I would say it's a positive, because it's such a good transmission. It's always going to shift at just the right point. It never felt like it was getting in the way. Although this is slower than the ETK on the leaderboard, and perhaps that is evidence that the automatic, even if I do like it in this case, isn't the best way to go from a flat-out speed perspective. As far as the time that this vehicle sets, it's just under 8 minutes, so a decent time there. It is a 7:55.636 time, which puts it within 10 seconds of the Bolide 350 GT, but still beaten by such a car, and within 10 seconds of the Brucal Leguan custom, but still beating such a car. Hey, if it was beaten by a modified front-wheel drive economy car, it would have something to be embarrassed about, but it hasn't been, so I think it's okay. I don't believe there's a single front-wheel drive car on the leaderboard that's beaten it, so it was a close-ish shave, but it got by eventually, and didn't allow the Oldsmobile, no, that's not an Oldsmobile, that's the Brucal, to beat it over the leaderboard. Either way, I would say it's slightly disappointed me, because I was expecting it to do a 7:50 time, maybe a 7:45, but it went slightly below that. As I say, I guess it's just the weight was too much. Although, the way this took corners, it really didn't feel bad at all, so that's another reason I'm surprised. Just taking these corners, it feels quicker, I guess, than it actually is. The ETK felt slower than it was, so an interesting contrast. The drifty car feels slow and the grippy car feels fast. On to the next vehicle. So, here we have the last Barstow V8. Well, It's a bit of a lightweight at 1659 kilograms, which is not something you would normally say, no. It is 31 and a bit kilos lighter than the ETK Norlhart, though, that we've had just recently, and it has a lot less power than that. It's 451 horsepower. It's still a lot of power, don't get me wrong, it's just less than that vehicle by give or take about 70 horsepower. So yeah, it's going to have to deliver around the corners. Now, as you would expect with a muscle car, it will spin the rear wheels and slide if you're not careful. The thing about all of these cars we're having today is because they're rear wheel drive, you have to take care. But thanks to the addition of a very good engine set and transmission set, we've got a collection of vehicles that are manageable and actually very, very fast for surprising amounts of speed, actually. But yeah, the recurring theme today here is muscle cars are not light, which is true. They are not lightweight, especially not when you have an 8-litre engine like this does. How this engine manages to be 8 litres and still make less power and torque than the 5.5-litre engine in the ETK, I'm not exactly sure. But that is the case, so I guess that's how things are going to go. Perhaps this is a pushrod engine, so it's not got quite as much of an advanced head. That would go and make sense. One thing I did find with this vehicle that really threw me off when driving it was the lack of ABS. Now, the ETK 800 Norlhart does have ABS, as I was saying. I was trying to reflect a modern car which would have all those assists. The Oldsmobile actually had ABS as well because it was quite a heavily customised vehicle and then it had presumably been added afterwards. The lower end variants of the Oldsmobile don't have ABS, but they don't need it. This kind of needs it, being a powerful vehicle, and it doesn't have it, so you know, you have to take care. You have to perhaps brake a little later, no, brake a little less in order to save time, if that makes sense, because the car, you're actually able to turn into corners if you're not hammering on the brakes. If you hammer on the brakes, you just go in a straight line and fly into the nearest wall, meaning the only way to brake straight out would be to brake incredibly earlier, and even that, just due to how the brakes are balanced, could get the rear to slide out in a intimidating old way. The car is kind of fast in that it goes 122 miles per hour. I wouldn't call that slow. I mean, 450 horsepower, it's not going to be slow. It did quite well, actually. Considering it's 450 horsepower, more powerful cars struggle to match that, so, you know, I can barely call that a bad thing. And, as I was saying, mainly ABS, or lack thereof, was the problem. It does get around corners, there is a decent amount of grip in the tyres when it comes to it, and you can get going where you need to get going, so round tight corners we went and eventually set a 7:24.730 time, which is within a minute of the Norlhart I keep mentioning because it's so similar to that car. It's V8 powered, it's rear wheel drive, it's front engined, and it's got wide tyres, and it's a wide body even, so yeah, it is just slower than that. And we are about 7 seconds quicker than the Series V10 supercharged all-wheel drive thingy, which puts this as the quickest American vehicle on the leaderboard, and it's rear-wheel drive, so I guess that can say good things about the balancing of this. Anyway, let's see what we've got next and whether we have any muscle cars capable of beating this. So, our next vehicle is the Ford Mustang Barstow GT 2015, which has absolutely nothing to do with Ford. This is a lightweight in its own way. It is 111 kilograms lighter than the last Barstow we had, surprisingly enough. Probably helped by the fact it's got a 5-litre engine as opposed to the 8-litre in that vehicle. However, it is still a more modern vehicle, so quite an impressive weight for a more modern vehicle to be only 1550-ish kilograms. Not normal that you say that, but when the competition in this particular day of the series is as heavy as it is, then this is a light car. As you'll see, I am struggling just a bit to get around the corners. That's because despite the low weight, it has 620 horsepower thanks to a supercharger, adding 190 horsepower to the standard version of this vehicle, which is a lot of power, really. And I think too much, because the wheels and tyres appear to be completely stock. As this is a police version of a car, that's why you get the supercharger, but it's just too much, really. If it had better tyres and better wheels, perhaps, it would have no trouble. It would be perfectly fine putting the power down to the road and getting going, but it isn't fine because of how much power you're expecting to go through these wheels. That's all there is to say, really. It has got ABS, has everything other than the older Barstow, and it did have ESC, but it was turned off, so as we would expect. Fully independent suspension all round, on this being a more modern vehicle, so that is a useful attribute of the vehicle when we're talking about time trialling it. As far as outright performance went, it was able to just flick 122 on the straightaway, and that is impressive as far as these things go. Although, as I was saying, the grit just isn't here as I would like it to be, and that made it more difficult on the uphill sections and perhaps slower, as opposed to a really grippy car. Like the Oldsmobile, for example, was really quite grippy. That would have been a lot quicker on the twisty section, despite its size, despite its weight. This vehicle really doesn't live up to a spec sheet, although it is still fairly capable in how it has beaten a Miramar Z240 actually, which was another vehicle which was astonishingly quick, lightweight as well for the class it was competing in, and very, very slidey, and just not as easy to control as I would like it to be. So, you know, similar minds think alike, I guess. It's just under 3 seconds quicker than that car. It is also quicker than a Bolide 350 GT, and that makes it quicker than the Bolide Corsair Competizione, as well as that car is slower, remember. We have come below the Vendetta number 7 race car, so hey, we're not quite beating the old Corvette equivalent thing. It's strange, the same company making the Corvette and the Mustang in this game, but that's the way things work out. And that was about 4 seconds and a bit quicker. It's also slower than an ETK 856 TD Sport Plus. So, you know, it's not European standards of performance, but we're only 10 seconds off, which isn't too bad, given this is not supposed to be as sophisticated as that. And that was an all-wheel drive car as well, so all in all, I don't think it's done too bad. On to the next vehicle. Our next vehicle is the Burnside Racing Chop. It is a vehicle which is got a lowered roof and a lot of power and a lot of torque as well, and tyres that really can't handle that power and torque, to be quite honest. You'll see here it's struggling to go down, as you would expect from any car of this power level. It's something like 700 horsepower we've got through these wheels, and it's a heavy old car as well, so, you know, it's going to need some decent tyres to put the power down, and it just hasn't got them. That is immediately the problem I can tell you with this car. It's a decent base actually for tuning, not the very best, but you can get performance from Burnsides if you tune them right. On an older PC specification build, let's say, I did build up a Burnside and it was pretty good, but I unfortunately lost a file, and this is, well, a car that I didn't lose the file for, mainly because I didn't make it and I just downloaded it, so I get to be lazy this time. It's not bad, but the tyres attached to it it needs much better tyres if it is to compete with the vehicles we've seen today. We've seen some real great muscle cars that can really help fight sports cars just thanks to how they grip round corners and how they have the power on the straights to go along with that. This is incredibly capable, and I was able to hit 120 almost on the straightaways, although was it really safe? No, I ended up doing an incredible initial D Eurobeat drift and somehow saving it. Well, that wasn't the fastest run, naturally, but I did do another one long before that, actually, and I only just managed to get a reasonable score. It was, score. This isn't football, it's a time. It's a 829.292. Not a 329, that would be incredible. No, this time is just above a Chevrolet Caprice, but it's a Brabham Custom, it's not the one we had earlier. And it's a minute and a bit slower than some other vehicles we've had today. It's just not able to grip. On the higher parts of the course, it's not so troubling because I'm able to at least know how to use the power. It's when you try and push on tyres that really aren't able to go 120 miles per hour. They feel like maybe 80, maybe 70 miles per hour they would be fine with, but 120 definitely not. So, yeah, we have to deal with that. And it can just instantly spin up the wheels at any sign of power. Even if you're being relatively gentle with it, it'll still spin up the wheels, and it's just the way the car is. Not much I can say about that. So, as I was saying about the time as well, it has also come above the Maluch 126p convertible tuned, which is an 834.528. And the Sunburst Taxi with the CVT is about 5 seconds slower. Yay! We've just about beaten a cheap Japanese taxi with a CVT in our muscle racing car. Yeah. I don't think that's something to be particularly proud of, but believe me, I was pushing this car, and although I'm not a great driver, it's hard for me to imagine someone getting that much quicker than my best lap in this. It just doesn't have the grip. As far as what it was below an 800 series taxi. Again, it's being swarmed by taxis at the moment, and a Grand Marshal taxi, also above it, as is the Pessima. That is the next car, just above it, at a 825 with a 3-litre V6 diesel. So hey, we can take that away from it. We've been beaten by a diesel and a pair of taxis. On to our final vehicle. For our final vehicle today, we have something very special. It is a Brukel Firehawk Custom. It is basically a Moonhawk with an extra set of front wheels and a Spitfire engine, which makes it interesting to drive, considering it was already a heavy old vehicle before the Spitfire engine was dropped in. Yeah, you'll see here, I am able to take a corner with it. I haven't flown off the course, which is definitely a positive. And speaking of which, considering this weighs 2.6 tons, it's not that bad round corners. I mean, sure, it's got a huge amount of power and a huge amount of weight and a huge amount of torque at that. So it will easily throw you off the course if you're not careful. But it's like driving a road train, for lack of a better term. The thing used to be a boat, I would say, as a Moonhawk, but in this configuration, well, it's definitely a land train now. It does half get gripped though, and it's over 900 horsepower and about 1900 torques from the Spitfire engine, which is also massive, by the way. You can see it wobbling about in the front. It's not the easiest thing to drive in the world, but it is a lot better than it could be. It's a lot better than that Burnside, I'll say that now, and that's a very strange thing to say, that a Spitfire engined 2.6 ton tank of a car essentially is better handling than something that's an intentional race car, but then that is the reality of the situation. I also like how the fire tends to come out of the top of the exhausts on the bonnet. That's pretty amusing from the interior. If it is a little scary, that is. The car was able to hit 124 miles per hour on the straightaway before I really had to slow down, because this thing can plough into the wall if you're not careful. It's a odd vehicle to drive. I mean, you can extract a fair old amount of speed from it, don't get me wrong. It is always going to be a weird car to drive, though, just because of what it is. We also get no ABS, so that's just being what it is. It's a 70s Moonhawk underneath, and it hasn't got it. It's not like the Westo Mod Oldsmobile. It hasn't had it added afterwards or anything, just no ABS on this particular car, unfortunately. Although cornering, as I was saying, is half good. It's kind of half good and half bad. It's not going to out-corner the Formula 1 car. Don't get me wrong, we know that by now. The most fastest vehicles here are vehicles that can take corners at incredible speeds and then hold a fair amount of speed on the straights as well. This has the straight line performance and it has a lot of cornering performance, just not enough to compete with the very best on the leaderboard. Having said that, the Firehawk was able to once again beat the Brukel Liguan Custom at a 7:58.339 time. Hey, we've also beaten the 8-minute mark, which is definitely not bad. It is also above the Bolide Corsair competition. Oh, nay, so hey, we're beating 80 supercars. We're doing something right here. And we are below the Bolide 350 GT, so we're also losing to 80 supercars at the same time. You know, it's weird. Weird world we live in. We're losing to the low-end supercars and beating the high-end supercars. Anyway, we have beaten a Dodge Viper, among other things. And the Dodge Viper was designed for performance, it just had no tyre grip. We've also beaten the aforementioned Burnside. And we have come below the Momar Z240, Barstow, Vendetta, a bunch of other stuff that sits above that in our leaderboard. Basically, below the dedicated sports cars, but so you would expect that, because this thing is not a dedicated sports car, and for all its problems, I think it's set a remarkable time. But either way, it's time to end this episode. I think it's been a very interesting week. We've had a few fast cars, and a few interesting cars. So, until next time, goodbye, until another day!